How do each of us work with change when all we want is stability? Well, that's something we're all working with right now, and we're getting some help and some expansion in that area of understanding in our lives. There's some big shifts happening currently by way of fixed placements in the astrological sky, and I just want to take a quick look at that as we look toward the week and before we jump into our weekly tarot. Now, today is June 11th, and the sun is in Gemini. Now, as the sun sets tonight, you'll be able to see both Venus and Mars in the evening sky. Mars is going to be just a touch above Venus by way of elevation, because they're just a couple of degrees apart. Now, what's interesting about this is that these two planets are in a square relationship with both the North Node and Jupiter, which are over in Taurus. And Jupiter is bringing an expansion and a new understanding, and in some ways a little bit of help as to how we're going to redirect our anchor and settle our anchor along the North Node. Now, we've been experiencing a lot of change because we've had Uranus over in the sign of Taurus for a number of years, and Uranus is a planet that brings a lot of unexpected, unavoidable changes in areas that are preventing us from progressing. And it's been doing that in the sign of Taurus, which is fixed earth in its nature. And so if you imagine fixed earth, it's like that unmovable solid force, whether it's through our stability around finances and our belief system, and ultimately wherever Taurus is placed in your natal chart. Each of us have all of the zodiac signs in our natal chart because when we're born, we basically have an imprint of the celestial sky upon our own personal star bodies. And those imprints are going to be landing in any of the particular houses in our natal chart. Now, even if we don't have a planet in one of these houses, we still have that energy in our makeup or in our own celestial map, so to speak. And depending on where that zodiac sign falls, it's going to show up in a specific area of our lives. For me personally, Taurus is over in the 9th house. So it's showing up for me by way of being a teacher and publishing works and really developing a different way of engaging with what I consider the divine, because the 9th house is our connection to that which is spiritual in our nature. Now, if you have Taurus in the 1st house, you're going to be experiencing a lot of this change in your sense of self and how you show up to the world and what motivates you. So ultimately, this change and shift is happening for you in your life, depending on where it is placed in your natal chart. And that does not matter. It doesn't matter if you have any planets in Taurus whatsoever. Of course, if you have a planet in Taurus or in any of the other fixed signs, Leo, Scorpio, or Aquarius, these energies are going to show up for you in a very powerful way, because mathematically, by way of angles and relationship, it's going to be triggering those energies in your life. And fixed zodiac signs don't like to shift. They don't like change in general. And so having Uranus be in this placement for a number of years is, rattling our cage and really asking us what we need to move towards. And of course, having Jupiter right on top of the North Node, it's bringing a level of expansion to that. Now, tomorrow morning when you wake up and the sun will be rising, you'll be able to actually see Jupiter in the morning sky, just in the east, about 40 degrees above the horizon, of course, depending on what time you wake up. So there are these big shifts and changes happening for us. And of course, if you want some help in navigating that and what's going on with your chart, you can reach out to me at rootsofalchemy@gmail.com. Now, as far as our tarot reading goes, of course, there are some energies on the table that we need to kind of bring light to. Our opening card of the day is the Ace of Swords, which is some kind of clarity or some communications, possibly even sharp communications, that really bring a sense of higher understanding to a situation. The swords are governing our mind, our communications, and the element of air. And so having a single sword is some kind of initiation of some kind of communication or idea or some aha moment when it comes to the mind and that realm that we like to spend so much time in. The challenge is the Ten of Swords, which is kind of an equal opposite energy. You know, a single sword is cutting through the clouds, cutting through disillusionment, and yet 10 swords is, you know, paralyzing ourselves by the mind. And so this challenge that we're working with is in the realm of the mind, which is actually pretty interesting, because right now we have Pluto, which is in retrograde at 0 degrees of Aquarius. It's going to be moving into like the 29th degree of Capricorn, but it's a really slow moving planet. And so, of course, Aquarius is another fixed sign. It's fixed air, and Venus just moved into Leo. So these energies of Pluto and Venus are in at a 100-degree relationship and creating a challenge of reflection in a lot of ways. Now, whenever we see a 10, we ultimately want to get to the 1 because we want more clarity. We don't want to be paralyzed by the mind, and yet that seems to be the donut of the week that we're working with. And so how do we take a couple steps back and examine how we can put ourselves into that position where we feel paralyzed by the mind? A way through that energy came in by the way of Virgo, which is also interesting to me when you consider that the mind is governed by air, right? And Virgo, even though it is a mutable earth sign, it's governed by Mercury. So Virgo as a sign is being practical in nature, in our efforts, in our activities. Virgo tends to be a bit critical. So we see this card by way of the Page of Coin, or, you know, Page of Pentacles, which is asking us to take a closer look at things and examine the parts, examine our own nature, how things get us engaged, and how things ultimately also kind of dismantle us, right? Because when we consider the realm of the mind, you can get a very fresh, inspiring idea that can be quite literally a breath of fresh air to your spirit. It can be very engaging when you have a sense of clarity around something. And yet when you feel paralyzed by the mind, it's quite a different energetic, right? It's just being overwhelmed by everything that the mind is stirring over again and again and again. And it has this quality of almost like a stagnancy to it, right? It's not moving, it's not able to flow, it's not able to shift. It's like a smothering quality of air. But then we had Virgo come in as the way through it. So it's asking us to examine the parts. It's asking us to separate the coarser from the finer and see what ultimately we need to do that is practical in nature, that we need to apply ourselves to. Now, it's also interesting that by way of the zodiac wheel, Virgo is in the opposite sign of Pisces. So right now we have Saturn in Pisces. It's in the very beginning degrees of Pisces. So if you do have Virgo in your chart, or wherever you have Virgo placed in your chart, there is this sense of valuation around, you know, how you're mirroring back wherever Pisces is at in your chart to your own self and your own self-development. The ultimate outcome that came through for the week is the Sun card. So this card showing up is actually pretty refreshing to me, considering that our challenge was the Ten of Swords, which is a kind of a dark card, considering it has the visual of 10 swords going down the back of this individual who looks quite defeated. But the Sun coming out is a different quality. It's like the sun breaking through the storm. It's a new realization. It's a new understanding. And through that realization, we're learning that we really ultimately have to stay true to ourselves and see the situation for what it is. See it in a new light and see these, different aspects of our own character and how this particular situation is working on us by way of friction, but what we're seeing and overcoming through it. Now that was clarified by the Two of Pentacles, where we see this person who's walking on a tightrope with one coin in either hand, seemingly turned by a belt of some sort. And behind them is this swelling body of water with ships on it. So you see this person who has these two values, these two areas of interest that they feel really called to developing and putting their effort and energy toward. But it's really kind of calling our attention to, if you put too much energy and effort toward one of those coins, you could quite easily knock yourself off of your path. So how do you find balance between these two values that you're holding in front of you? And how do you keep your aim and your focus on what you're moving toward, despite all of the emotional things that are going on in the background that are trying to kind of take your attention? It's so important, that we keep our energy and our focus on that which we want to move toward, because otherwise it's really easy to, skip a step. That was further clarified by the Lover's card. So again, we have this reference to relationship and a reference to Mercury and communications and really how we want to show up and a choice that needs to be made. This is another card that is reminding us that we have to stay true to ourselves and stay true to what our beliefs and our value system is, and let that guide us in relationship to see whether or not it's actually able to sync up, right? Because the Lover's card is a major arcana. It's some life lesson that is being brought to the table. And it also is highlighting that Gemini and Mercurial energy around communication and how we see things and how we exchange with people. So whatever it is that we've been going through is bringing a new light to some kind of relationship or interaction that we've had, which is possibly quite powerful. That was further clarified by the Two of Wands, in addition to the Seven of Wands and the Fool. So what is it that we feel like we need to take care of before we can actually move forward into the direction that all of this is ultimately telling us that we have to move toward? And yet also, where do we need to hold boundaries in that exchange and that communication? Things are still in the midst of change. Whenever we have the Fool show up, it is referencing that Uranus energy of unexpected change that is ultimately moving us toward some kind of higher calling or inspiration that we've received in life. And the Fool is honestly another reminder that if you feel like you are in a time of unknown and great change, it is always most important to follow your own truth and follow your own heart. I send you all a lot of love as you navigate through this change. And if anything, I hope it is bringing you to a sense of self where you are beginning to listen to your own inner compass as a way to help guide you through these times of unknown. I send you a lot of love and a good wish, and I hope you have a wonderful week. Bye for now.